What up, fam? Welcome back to Entrepreneur Hour Podcast and Entrepreneur Hour TV. I've got an awesome guest today, and it was very serendipitous. It's probably the best way to say it. I went back, and I'm really guilty of this. So I'm going to go ahead and give you and let you off the hook, right? Because I think a lot of type A entrepreneurs, or just type A people in general, we really diminish the importance of planning. And I am guilty of this. And I read these books and I get really fired up about it. And then I find myself, if I don't keep reiterating that, kind of slipping back into that, not really validating or not really valuing planning the way that I should. So hopefully today, if that sounds like you need to sit tight. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. I'm reading the 12-week year right now. So my guest, Sean Castrina, is going to come on to talk. He's built several multi-million-dollar companies, works with companies that have done billions of dollars in revenue. So in terms of credibility, I think it is established, right? So Sean, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
No, I'm great. Excited to be here.
Cool, man. So I gave you a little bit of a intro there, but give us the full elevator pitch.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I apologize.
I
I went out there just for a second. I apologize. I'm just, about 25 years ago, lost my dream job and realized then that I'd never work for anybody again long-term, only to transition to, being an entrepreneur. Started a business then and have rinsed and repeated for 25 years. And along the way, I've written a few books that have done well, and I go to colleges and guest lecture on business, but my passion is starting companies. I try to start and/or create a new division every single year in one of my entities. So writing is just an overflow of my business experience. It just has to come out because it's like, I'm like, I journal every day and I learn something every day about business, and it just turns into a book.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I want to make sure we talk about this before we jump into any of the other, planning and getting really nuanced with that. We have multi-passionate people that listen to this show, and I've had several folks on. I reference Jeff Hoffman frequently, and one of the things that he said when he came on the show was that he really tried to isolate his energy and his efforts on one thing at a time. So how would you say, with all the various, you just mentioned all these initiatives and books and things of that nature, how do you find that you manage all of those when you're not losing that superpower that entrepreneurs have of extreme focus?
Yeah. And I do think extreme focus is critical. What it is I always say I don't manage time. I manage my energy. And I'm older than you. When I was 20 to 30, I could go 20 hours a day, and that was great. Now, 50 some, my early 50s. So that's not necessarily the case. So the key to me is I know I got 3 windows in the course of a day where I'm on. Where you can get the best of me. So in the morning I write and research because I know that's my window. Then my office they get 2 hours of me a day when they can book any meetings they want. I can meet with my partners. I'm on. And then I have 2 hours that I can decide, like do a podcast like this or something like that. So I'm aware that I've got like 3 pockets. And then with that, each quarter of the year, I focus on one initiative. I don't try to do like my whiteboard's right there. Like I go on 3 months. I have one thing that moves the needle. It's the one domino. It's the one thing I want to knock down that will knock over 10 other dominoes. So I try to break my year, like, in 4 chunks of 3 months with one key initiative each 3 months.
Yeah. Another thing we want to hit on real quick, I think is really important, as you just mentioned, having that one thing, right? And I think a lot of people, when they hear you say this, was my wife and I, we actually just were talking about this the other day. She went down we live in Austin. So she went down and we did like a VIP day at Digital Marketer with Ryan Dice and those guys. And they basically said, here's the deal. Every year we have 3 to 4 major initiatives and we try to get 1 a quarter. And here we were, by contrast, trying to do like 3 or 4 initiatives a week. And so I think what we realize, or what we end up, discovering as we mature as entrepreneurs, is what you just said. It's what's the one domino that needs to fall, right? But there's a lot of resistance to that. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is about overcoming those objections that we have, right? This notion, these preconceived notions we have about what success looks like. And I don't know that I do the best job, Sean, of getting through to people to really drive home that point. So let's go back early Sean years.
Yeah.
How did you arrive, or what was the process, the evolutionary process of you getting to the point of realizing dude, it's not about all the things. It's about that one thing and figuring out what that is. And then how do you arrive at that one thing?
Yeah. I think the key is that one thing I got early, a great John Maxwell quote, is on leadership, is he's kind of like, listen, I don't care. I focus on about 1%. In other words, I'm like a laser. I do one thing. I do one thing really, really well. 99 other things I don't do well. I realize that my skill set is extremely narrow.
Mm,
But what I'm good at, I really think I'm really good at, and I'd bet my life on it. And if the ball was on the 1 yard line, I'm the only person I want carrying the ball.
right.
So I think you early on, you need to realize you're not, it's impossible to be great at a lot of things. And that applies to a company. It's the same thing. I can't be great at 10 different things. Your
Mm,
company probably can't do great. That's why GE's in trouble. That's
right.
why all these American car companies are in trouble. Can you name 3 models of a Honda? They have 3. Chevy's got like 20. You
Yeah.
can't brand 20 different things. You got a Honda, you got a Honda Accord, a Honda Civic, and an Odyssey. They don't spread out over 20 different things. And I think more is not better.
Mm. Yeah, and not only that too, it ties into your marketing as well. I was just reading the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, and
I
some of
have it
it's
right. I have it right. You're naming books. It's 6 feet from me.
that's awesome, man. But he calls it brand extension, and I don't know, Sean. And I'll be curious to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on this. The book was written in the early 90s. I think I want to say 93.
Yeah.
Don't quote me.
Yeah.
Some of it was pre-internet, so the world changed for the better,
Yeah.
I think, because if you
Yeah.
look at that book, the context of that book, it would have been so hard to establish market penetration, right? Because in terms of visibility, it just wasn't there. And you couldn't outspend your market to get in front of your audience the way that other brands could. But even then, even the big boys like the Hondas and the folks you just mentioned,
Yeah.
right? When they tried to expand and have all these different these different lines, these what they call brand extensions, I believe
Yeah.
it calls it, right? It doesn't work because people have an established perception of you and what you sell. When you get away from that, like, don't be Coke, be different, be for young people. Pepsi went for young people. That was
Yeah.
where the young people drink, right? So people start to know you for those things, which I think for me, kind of, people always say this. This is why I want to bring this up. They
Yeah.
always say, well, who do you serve? Who's your ideal customer? I think that starts with figuring out who's not your ideal customer, right? Like, process of elimination. Let's eliminate some opportunities to really fixate on the things that are your opportunities. Is that kind of how you arrive at figuring out what your one thing is? Obviously understanding what your limitations are, but then figuring out who you don't serve to then establish who you do serve.
Absolutely. Like when you're talking about branding, 100%. And I like branding is one of those 3 superpowers I have that I said I can't do a lot, but I'll bet on my branding
I
ability
dig it.
it's just the one thing. Cause when I work with people on how to brand, I've got it down to this one thing. What one promise,
Mm,
if you could deliver on it, that your competition hasn't, can't, isn't, your target customer would chase you down for your business. That's your branding position.
mm,
Stamp your flag in that. That's what Domino's Pizza did. That's what Amazon does. You look at every single, what does Amazon do? It delivers you retail faster, gives you the widest selection, better than anybody. You can
yeah.
wrap it up in one sentence. Nike, they have, they basically, their shoes and attire worn by the most accomplished athletes in the world. That's their brand.
Mm,
They don't need to, they can puzzle what, they can play with a lot of other things, but at the end of the day, that's all Nike's accomplishing. They're putting the best athletes in the world in their attire so that you associate them with that. The best companies do that. You look at like Allstate right now, save 40%. That's that
okay.
save 40% guy. They repeated that phrase 7 times in one commercial.
Mm, yeah.
You can only brand one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So if the idea, you can only extend. The number one piece of advice I get from people who start business, everyone, it's funny because I've had like the founder of Scrub Daddy, and I've talked to a lot of big time, people in the last month. Every one of them, when I ask them the one piece of advice they give the startup people, they go, don't have so many SKUs.
Yeah.
Don't have so many product extensions.
But do you think though that that's a result of, and this is what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that you arrive at that one superpower, right? Because maybe some people don't know what that is. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. My argument is that some people try to jump specifically now with the internet, right? Because we have FOMO like crazy. At least back in the day, things were quiet, right? When I started my first business, it wasn't all this noise all over the place. It was just me and the world and figuring out how I was going to build my business. And that was challenging because it was a lack of information. I act like I did this 100 years ago. This was like 9 years ago, if that, right?
I was
7
going to
years
say, because
ago.
you look 30 to 35. So like, this guy's not 50.
No, right. But even then, the noise wasn't nearly as prevalent as it is today, right? So it gave you silence, right? That I feel like so many of us need, and that allowed for clarity to take place, right? I always say, like, a clarity requires intention. Like, you have to really immerse yourself in that space. But anyway, so the reason I'm saying that is because doing that work, rolling up my sleeves and getting in, immersing myself in my market is where I figured out where our superpower was. I think the reason so many people are trying to do so many different things, all these brand extensions, and they don't know what they stand for in their brand, is because they are going through that process, right? They are going through that process of figuring out, okay, what am I? Who am I? Who is our business? Who is our brand? Who do we serve? Right. And it's hard to kind of fixate or pinpoint what that one thing is. Would you agree, disagree? Why or why not?
What I would say is they didn't do a business plan, because
Sure.
they should have known that before they started,
You're right. Yeah.
to be frank with you. And then if you don't, then you need to do a business plan after the fact, because that's the whole core of a bit, whether you have a 3-point business plan or a 25-point. I'm not
Sure.
going to get into that. Oprah did hers on a napkin. So did Southwest
Mhm.
Airlines. So the length of it, but you can't start a business without knowing who you're going to serve
Right.
and how you're going to differentiate yourself and be better than your competition. If your
Right.
business plan only accomplished those two things, but if you started a business and you don't know who your target customer is and what you're going to focus on to deliver to them, I would tell you that you need to pause immediately and
Yeah.
establish those two things, because I don't know, it'd be like not calling a play in the huddle.
Right.
Who's getting the ball?
Right.
Who's blocking who's doing what? I mean, it's going to be chaos.
Right. But why do so many of us then, we find ourselves in these situations where we have 25 different products we're trying to sell.
Yeah.
We don't know that, and we haven't done the business plan. We haven't done that planning. What is it about the human psyche of type A's that we're just so repulsed by the idea of planning, and we just don't value it as the same degree of productive, quote unquote, work that we do with the heavy lifting.
Yeah. The illustration I give, listen, I am type A. My wife, we went to this seminar one time and it was breaking up personality types. And you had the deer, you had, the golden retriever, and then you had the lion. And they came to my wife and they said, "What's Sean?" My wife goes, "Sean is the lion that eats the baby lions."
Mhm.
In other words, I'm as intense as any human being on the planet. But what I always tell persons is, if I gave you $1 million and a lot of land, and I said, "Hey, man, it's yours, have it," you would not run the Home Depot or Lowe's and start buying wood and start nailing up a
Right.
house. You do a blueprint.
Sure.
If I give you a free vacation right now, I got here, it's $10,000. You can go on vacation. You would not go get in your car, go to the
Right.
airport, and you would kind of go, "Oh, do I want a winter vacation or a summer vacation?"
Mm,
All I'm saying is put the same amount of time you put into a
totally.
vacation or your dream house for your business. So
Yeah.
you don't make the mistakes. You're not running in 10 different directions. It'll save you a ton of money.
Do you think that we don't? That was a great illustration, by the way. I really like that. Do you think the reason we don't do that is because we don't know what the blueprint should look like, and thus or do you think we're just being flat out lazy? Maybe it's a combination of the two.
I tell you what the answer is, and if I could reach it, I would, but I can't with my headset. But yeah, it's right down over there. If you look, I have every book on Amazon on business plans.
Hmm.
That's why people don't do it, because they've bought or seen these books and they're crap. They're
Mm,
horrible. They're 365 pages. It's a doctorates in rubbish. And I think that we're so intimidated by it. That's why I wrote my book, The World's Greatest Business Plan, because my son, who was 18, wanted to start a business. And I said, let me write it, let me condense it for him and his friend.
mm,
Kind of like every day I'd give them like one question or to work. And I just simplified it. I think we think it's harder than it is. It's going to be
yeah.
exhaustive. It's going to slow us down. And I think that's the big reason, actually.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's funny you say that, because we've gotten so sophisticated, and maybe that's the right word to use. Again, I talked about noise before, but I think also too, we've gotten so sophisticated. Some of the programs that I'm involved with, some of these like tech accelerator programs and such, it's like, dude, they're figuring out stuff. And I'm like, you don't have the basics. You don't have the foundation in place. You're talking about raising money and seed rounds and pitching investors. Like, I know that's a part of it, but
Where's your proof of
How,
concept?
how are
Where's
you going
your
to get a
target?
customer first? What's your core value proposition first?
That's in my first 7 questions. This is what makes my business planning. Your audience is getting it for free. So I'm not pimping anything out there. You're all
Right,
getting this
right.
for free. But let me tell you what I do in my business plan book that's different than, because it's so funny that you bring that up. Every business plan book I've read has this hypothesis. Chapter 1, John or Mary's going to start ABC tools or ABC digital marketing. And in chapter 20, it succeeds and makes $1 million. It always succeeds. Like the business is still standing in chapter 20. You may not get past page 10 in my book. And you go, you know, this probably wasn't a good idea. And I am just as happy to talk you out of a bad idea.
Yeah.
As wean you to the end and give you the illusion that you have a good idea.
Do you think that's a great point, man? I'm so glad you bring that up. I think I likened, and I think that a lot of people feel this way. You can tell a more mature, established entrepreneur from one that maybe is newer. I think, the example I give is this, like your first like puppy love, right? Your first true love, your first business or your first few businesses. You kind of fall in love with the idea of it, you kind of romanticize the idea of it, but you're not, it removes the objectivity of like, okay, but this isn't really that valid. And furthermore, it's not all that scalable. And there's other things that I could pursue that maybe are more, have more of those opportunities, right? Have a higher ceiling for growth, maybe align better with what my lifestyle goals are. So how much do you think of it that comes into play? Maybe people just don't want to do the planning because it's kind of a scary thing to have to realize my baby might be ugly.
This is funny. If I could share the screen with you, I don't have the technical capacity, but I talk about the entrepreneur's Bermuda Triangle, the 3 things that crushes startups. And the number 1 is the entrepreneur falls in love with their idea.
Yeah.
That's it. That is the number 1. There's 3 of them, but number 1 is they fall so in love with their idea that they show it to friends in such a way that you can't criticize. Like, isn't my baby beautiful? No, really, your baby's butt ugly. No, they frame it, isn't my baby beautiful?
Right.
And we go, yeah, I think that's going to do great. I'm excited for you. You know, we don't expose it to people that will criticize it, make it better, collaborate with you, test it. We're afraid of that. We're just not willing to hear any criticism. Thus, we don't want to expose it to a business plan, because even if it's a bad business plan, it will poke some holes in there.
So how do you, okay, so you go through and I think, you know, starting at someplace like your book, it sounds like a fantastic idea. So you've done that work, you're doing your research, you're now there's more data points than you could ever ask for, right? I talked about before how, you know, early 90s, that didn't exist, right? Now we have all of as many data points as you care to ever want to have. That's the hard part, is disseminating valuable information from it. So here's the deal. You see, and this is why I want to bring this up.
Yeah.
You see people that are one side. I'm in love with my idea. No one's going to convince me otherwise. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's going to change the world. Everybody else sees that it's butt ugly and it's not going anywhere. Yeah. You have that side. Then you have the other side. And this isn't a false dilemma. I know there's a lot of gray in between, but let's talk about the other side of that spectrum, right? You see people that just blow in the wind. Maybe they do have a great idea, but every piece of advice they get from everybody, they just pivot, you know, because they just can't. I think those people drive me even crazier, because they lack leadership. They blow it whenever the wind blows is where they take them. So how do you kind of navigate with the plan you're developing? How do you stay or arrive at somewhere in the middle of that?
Well, there's a reason why only 1 in 2 businesses succeed.
Sure.
Because you're just kind of exposing the problem. I mean, if you have no focus, and that's the one that you're kind of talking about, is we've all met the people that have a new idea every 6 weeks.
Right.
You know, every 6 weeks have one. I mean, why entrepreneurs, you know, are the wealthiest, you know, profession in the world is, at some point in our life, we had the ability to not only have an idea, to focus on that idea, and to execute on it. And we will only reward you if you do all 3.
Yeah.
And if you can't do all 3, you're the 1 in 2. So the point is that I think what the problem is, everybody wants something easy. There's 32 NFL owners. Every single one of them have one thing in common. They all either started a company or they're the relatives of somebody who started a company.
Sure.
In 32 cases. It's the exclusive entrepreneur club.
Right.
So it requires you having to do three things. You can't jump around all over the place and be successful. It doesn't work in anything. I mean, LeBron James does one thing. Tiger Woods does one thing. You got to do something. You got to focus on something for at least a sustained period of time
Mm,
to be successful. I think, in anything, I think sometimes we try to defy the laws of success,
sure.
and they're universal.
Sure.
They're universal, and it's hard to defy them.
So, yeah. So how do you take criticisms about your business plan or critiques or observations and make sure that it aligns with the core direction of where you're going, but still stay steadfast in that focus, in that pursuit? Does that make sense?
I mean, I think the problem is, and this is why I do it last in my business plan,
Okay.
we all get too touchy-feely about our mission value statement.
Okay.
I mean, that's like a millennial thing. We have the cutest mission statement. We're going to
Sure.
feed puppies. We're
Right.
not going to trample on grass. If we make money, we'll give it all away. And I'm kind of like, hey, listen, I appreciate all those things, but first, let's come up with a business that actually makes money.
Right.
Then we'll get into our mission, our value, and our vision statement. But
Mm,
it's the last question in my book, because you don't deserve. You don't. If you don't have a profitable idea, all that's nonsense.
yeah.
I mean, at the
So,
end of the day, a business has one goal to be profitable.
mm,
If not, it's a nonprofit. That's fine. Start a nonprofit.
right.
But business has one objective: bring value to a customer and receive compensation for it. Receive payment for your services and or your products. That's business.
So what I hear you saying then is if you went to a pitch event and you had this business plan ironed out and everybody there is one of the sharks, right?
Yeah.
From Shark Tank, or at least they think they are.
Yeah.
Your argument, regardless of what they said, would be focus on the numbers. Are the numbers there? Because if they
Always
have an
numbers.
opinion about something, they may not have the same depth of knowledge that you have about your field, right? Domain expertise to provide that kind of input. And that's where
Well,
you see people kind of either arguing that or pivoting at that. This
I
is what
think
I
you
keep saying
learn.
this point. This is a really important thing. I see this
Yeah,
all
no,
the
and
time.
this is what I think. If I'm sitting in front of the Shark Tanks, of which, they're extraordinarily successful people, what I do in every situation is I shut up and listen. And I'm sitting in front of six extraordinarily smart people. And I
Right.
would say that if I was sitting at a luncheon with six local businesses in my area, I pitched my idea to and kind of bounced it off. And I do this all the time. I would listen. And if between them they can improve one thing, I might
Yeah.
not do it exactly the way, but I have no problem with collaboration.
Yeah.
I have no problem with, I always say my ideas sound great in my head. And then I expose them to oxygen.
Mm,
And then they get beat up a little bit and they get it, but they
yeah.
always get improved. And then I come back and go, man, I didn't see that, but maybe I can do this. Collaboration, the old
Yeah.
mastermind group, Think and Grow Rich, it works.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would adopt everything that they said, but I'd
Right.
have a hard time thinking if I didn't listen to the Shark Tank people, I didn't walk away with something of value.
Yeah. So if I hear you saying, for one, I think the first and foremost thing is, and Brene Brown talks about this, I think is really, really important, is to draw your little 1 inch by 1 inch square and figure out the opinions that you care about. They fit in that 1 inch by 1 inch. Everybody else is just noise. So I think, first of all, if you have the opportunity to sit in front of the sharks in Shark Tank, you obviously want to listen to what the hell they have to say. Now, your neighbor, Sally,
Absolutely.
maybe not. She has no idea what she's talking about, right? So those are the things where I think we have to make sure we understand we have the right audience in front of us, right? But then also, too, I think we have to understand that when somebody doesn't see our idea the way that it lands, right? You said in your head,
Yeah.
we have these
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
ideas in our head.
Yeah.
The problem, though, I see, Sean, and maybe you see this too, is that people then, rather than listen, like you said, they spend the entire time working on their rebuttal. But you don't understand. But this and this and this and this. And it's like, no. Here's the deal. The presentation of your idea is what's not landing. So listen, because if you still believe in that idea, you need to work on how you're presenting it, because clearly it didn't land the way you wanted it to. Clearly it's not the idea that you thought it was, or you're not presenting it as such.
Absolutely. I mean, if somebody can poke a hole in your idea, they don't even mean to. They just bring up something you hadn't thought of. I'll give you like one illustration of this. Listen, again, I've started 20 companies. I live really, really good. And I think I'm a genius at some times. I walk in my office. This is too funny. and I have 5 business partners, and I talk about making an expansion on the 2nd floor of our office. And I'm like,
Mm,
no, I want everybody to be here, and we're going to do this. And I'm going through this whole thing. I'm getting ready to get a blueprint done. And one of my quiet business partners goes, Sean, come here for a second. And we walk downstairs, and we walk into like one room that has all these boxes in it. And he turns on the light. He said, why don't we just clean out the boxes and put that person right here?
mm.
The point is, it was right in front of my eyes. I walk by it every single day.
Yeah.
And I was going to build a new, a new, addition and all this for my company. And he's just so quiet, just kind of walks me down the stairs and flicks on the light. And then the aha moment hits me like, I'm like, how did I not sit here and see this? I walk by it every day.
That's so
Sometimes
funny.
an idea could be right in front of you, but you're so focused on something else, you just completely miss it.
Do you think it's a hubris thing too? Sometimes I get that. You can't expect to have the bandwidth to catch everything. But do you think there's a
Yeah.
hubris thing too with that, with some of those things?
I mean, I think it is, but I think it's a mistake. What I do is this: I have the ability to take a lot of advice and just politely nod my head and go, yeah, believe me, 9 out of 10 things I hear is crap, in that
Right.
I don't think it falls to the level that I think you have to be leadership is the ability to choose between good and great.
Yeah.
There you go. In other words, I get a lot of good ideas, but they're not great ideas.
Mm,
Or somebody wants to improve my idea, and it's a good idea, but it's not a great idea. It's not as good as it needs to quite be to make me adjust or move the needle. I think leadership, again, let me say it again, it's the difference between choosing between good and great. And really good leaders can discern, they can hear the 90%, and they're, yeah, that's good. I appreciate that, John. I'll think about that.
right.
It, they just brush it off and whatever, and they find the one that shocks them and is really, really good, and then they pivot on it.
Interesting. All right, man. Let's talk about that. Big ideas, good versus great ideas. Let's talk about the great ideas. All right. So I think you see a lot of people. They we talked about being stuck, right? And kind of that's a huge thing now. I know because I sell a product about being stuck, and you should see the search results. They just keep going up and up and up for people feeling stuck. So when it comes to annualized planning, and again, I'm reading the 12-week year right now. So this is like really kind of top of mind for me. And he kind of boo-boos on annualized planning. So, and I understand the premise why, and I hadn't been able to articulate the reasons why I felt this, but I felt it, and I'm glad he wrote it as such.
Yeah.
But effectively, the problem is there's just such a degree of uncertainty. When you plan something at the beginning of the year, the action steps, you really don't know January what's going to be going on in October, and thus it's too far spread out to really have actionable steps, and thus the whole reason, the premise behind having a 12-week year versus a 52-week year, right? So that's the premise of the book for those who haven't read it. So how do you recommend people making their plans actionable, those great ideas that they have?
Yeah.
How do you suggest they make a plan for that so that they do feel like they're moving forward and they don't feel like they're stuck? Because I think staying stuck for a long period of time is leading to the burnout that we're experiencing. People feeling burned out, overwhelmed, stressed, all these various things. I think if they're moving forward, they're making progress in their lives and their businesses, a lot of those things are going to be eased just because they feel like they are moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think, setting goals and that entire topic is, I think number one is you can only accomplish so much. And I think that sometimes just people in general try to do too many things, just in general.
Sure.
So
Totally agree.
I think that, like with me, I try to focus on just a few things, never more than 5 things in a year.
Mm,
Okay. So I'll go, what's the number one thing that would move my business the furthest? What's another, things that are important to me? What would be great for my marriage? What would be great for my physical health? Whatever I view as important. I don't try to do 10 different things. And then I try to, when I break my quarters, my quarters out, I try to create daily habits in that one period of time. I think the problem is we try to do so many different things. And then if it mine has been really simple. Because I read that book and I love it. So first part of the year, let's say I'm writing, that's a writing phase. Well, that's priority 1. So that gets the most time. I'm writing, and I could have a secondary goal like fitness or something like that. And I kind of break that second. So I got to have 30 minutes of exercise. You write your goal out, and then you got to take action on it every day. And my secret to doing anything is I think you create habits for anything
Yeah.
you want to accomplish.
100% agree.
So I have a
100%.
daily habit. Somebody said, well, how'd you write a book? One sentence at a time. I got up every morning and wrote for 15 minutes. And I specifically got up after 15 minutes because I didn't want to get burnt out. I didn't want it to be like a quick little thing. So it made me hungry to come write the next day because I only let myself write for 15 minutes. And so I create, micro habits in the one area that I'm working towards, and I stick on that for 90 days, and that 90 typically turns to 180. But normally I finish what I want.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we jump in with 2 feet and we bite off way more than we could. We're going to get a Peloton bike. We're going to drive 2 hours a day.
It's ridiculous.
But we've never, ever driven. Okay, why don't you do it for 20 minutes a day? And do that for, a whole 90 days or 30 days. I think we just, in general, we just try to do too much, too fast. just my general observation.
I completely agree. And that was the big, I would say, in the last year and a half, 2 years, just to reiterate this point, guys, because I think it's so profound and important. I think the biggest difference between even the wealthy versus the ultra wealthy is the ability to build success habits, to figure out what those keystone habits are and to drive them home, right? Like, I think a lot of people, we rely too much on willpower, discipline, right? And I think those are good in spurts, right? For you, getting that 15 minutes every morning, that takes short-term discipline and willpower. 15 minutes, that's all you're asking for. Go to the gym, Peloton, do 20 minutes, right? Like, that's it. But over time, you kind of strengthen that. It becomes a habit, right? What, 66 days, I think, is the average to build a habit? Yeah. So, man, if you can figure out what those are, I just think that again, that comes into your planning too, right? So, I don't know if you use this thing, my full focus planner. I talk about it all the time. My audience is probably so tired of hearing me talk about it.
I have a journal that I have a system and how I write everything out. I'm a plan. Look, I have here's my day plan. Everybody has their thing, but like every day I still transfer it to a piece of paper.
Nice.
And where I lay out, anything I have to do that has to move the needle.
Yep.
And I blueprint that like this. I start the day, I write this out, and then I confirm it with my Google Calendar so that everything's kind of matching up. But I'm an old guy. I like to write things down and make sure that
the data's there, man. 43% increase likelihood of you achieving something by just writing it down. I mean, dude, if we could increase, imagine this. Imagine if I told you you could increase your conversion metrics on your Facebook ads by 43%. Everybody and their grandma will be doing it. Everybody would do it. And here we have this right in front of us. 43% increase in probability of you achieving that goal or doing that thing just by writing it down. And then we resist it. I don't want to write things down. I don't want to take the 5 minutes to do it. Like, we're just our own worst enemy in so many ways. And I even take that a step further. And I started doing this because I realized in reading 12-Week Year, which I've mentioned a couple of times now, that one of the things that I wasn't doing is I was writing down my big three or my MITs or whatever. You hear a lot of people talk about that. What's the 3 things that are going to move forward in the direction of what your long-term goals are, right? Make sure you get those 3 things done, if nothing else, right? Everything else is a task that can be pushed or delegated or whatever. So one thing I wasn't doing though is that hour by hour breakdown. Okay, let's think about it practically. What am I going to do throughout my day between hours 9 and 10, 10 and 11, 12 and when am I going to take my breaks? When am I going to do these sessions? When am I going to do breakout sessions, right? Like all these various things I wasn't doing. And I found myself kind of, it's Parkinson's law. Like, your work will expand to the time you provide or your time you allow for it. Like, I'm being so much more efficient when I give myself an allotted amount of time to do something versus just, here's my day, blank canvas. And I think that's part of the millennial thing. You mentioned millennials. I'll own it, right? I'm a millennial.
Yeah.
I think part of it is we don't want to have that structure and that rigidity. We want to be able to be free and express ourselves and have time for Instagram and all this and that. But dude, the data just doesn't lie. Like, and I know a lot of mine is I'm presenting anecdotal evidence, but man, I've read enough and studied enough to know that this stuff is powerful. It's real. And it takes so much of that, like, what if stress that's in your brain, and you get that on paper, and all of a sudden you don't have to take up bandwidth for that anymore. Now you focus on the creative stuff. You get those juices flowing, you get the ideas going, you start really strategic planning. Like, that's the exciting stuff when you don't have to worry about carrying this crap around your brain all the time, trying to remember everything.
Yeah. I think the problem is that too many people are caught up in this creative thing.
Sure.
To be frank with you, I'm creative. I think all the time.
Sure.
But creativity without massive effort means nothing.
Yeah.
In other words, if you can't take action on something day after day, it's a moot point. How good of an idea? I mean, good
Right.
ideas die on the floor every day
Yeah.
because somebody just didn't take relentless action on
No, no,
them.
no. Ideas are
And
shit. I'll just go ahead and say
yeah,
it.
thank you.
Ideas are
I
shit.
know I do. I say the same thing. I
Yeah.
go, man, don't tell me you have an idea. I beat my ideas into submission. I don't
Yeah.
even know if they're good when they start out,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
beat the hell out of them. And
Yeah.
only when they die because I can't do anything more to make it work, I go, guess what? It was good at the time I made it. I whiteboard it, forget it,
Yeah.
move on to another one.
Yeah.
Like I did
Yeah. Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
I can to make that one succeed. It's time to move on.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's why this is way off topic, but this whole pitch about, will you sign my NDA? I'm like, I ain't signing no damn NDA. If you think your idea is worth something, I'm not the right fit for
Yeah.
you right now anyways. I can tell you that. So stupid.
That's too. Oh, that's funny. No, I love it. And this is what I taught my teenager, and it's really important. Blueprint your week before your week.
Mm,
I sit down on Sundays
totally.
and I just kind of lay out, okay, I make a list. What do I absolutely have to get done this week that if I don't get it done will cost me money or have a consequence? Pay
Yeah.
your mortgage payment. You know,
Sure.
you told your wife you're going to take her out to dinner. You write those down. Then you write, okay, if I get all this done, what should I get done? These are high value things. And then if everything, what could I get done? So I do my ABC list. Then I schedule them in my calendar and then put them in my Google calendar. Okay, I'm going to dinner. Well, I'm putting that in. It's already there. I see it. It's already scheduled. I blueprint it on Sunday, calendar it, so that when I start my week, when I get up every morning, I already kind of know.
You know what you're
Number
doing.
one, I already told you, I only schedule everything in my time zones where I have energy anyway. So I already know how my day is kind of blocked. I know I'm going to do things in these blocks anyway. It's just what I'm going to be doing.
Right.
But I think blueprinting your week has been something I've used that is really.
I totally agree. Now, when you say that, do you nuance it down even to what your big three are going to be, if you call it a big three, whatever you call it,
Yeah.
like those, you said the big tasks that have to get done. Do you break that down? So like, if I put here that all things have to get done for the week,
Yeah.
do you nuance it down to Monday's this day, Tuesday's this day? So for example, I have themes. So
Yeah.
Tuesday's
I do the
recording
same
days, right?
thing.
Here we are, we're
Yeah.
recording. It's a Tuesday. So I'll go ahead and do my solo video and any internal videos I need to do for the company. I'll do on my Tuesdays because I'm going to capitalize on the opportunity that I already have all my equipment set up and I'm ready to rock and roll. And I'm dressed appropriately for video and so on and so forth. So you kind of work within that wireframe or
I do the same
do you,
thing. I have like marketing days. I have like meeting days where I tell my staff, anybody wants to meet with me, this is the day, this is how long they get, boom. And then I have, days when I want to write or research more. And so I like to lay out thing. I like to know every week, I do, if I can, having a Monday, a Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of a theme day, because I wake up already kind of knows what direction we're going to go. But I always say, I break my day out into what do I have to get at the end of the day that has a consequence? And what do I need to do? What can I do today that moves me financially forward? Right. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, we all pay bills.
That's an important one, man. A lot of people don't do that.
A lot of guys sugarcoat their creativity. Sure. Well, I'm going to sit and read today. I'm going to do this. Guess what? Mark Cuban reads three hours a day. He's a billionaire. Warren Buffett reads 8 hours a day. He's worth $60 billion. They have the time to do that. You might be only able to read a half hour a day or 15 hours a day because you got to work. You can have good habits, but one of those habits is you probably should do something every day that generates money for your business and for you. And I think that's where a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking too much, too creative. And I was like, well, did you make any money this week?
Yeah.
You got a hobby. I crush people with this. They'll go to lunch and I'm doing this. I go, how much money have you made last month with it? Well, you got a hobby. You have a hobby. See, if you don't make money with it, it is a hobby. Now, if you want to continue it as a hobby, that's fine, but please don't call it a business. So I try to do something nearly every day when it's business related that generates an income. But at the end of the day, I go, man, I made the company this. That phone call made the company that, or whatever. I want to move in the money, having financial contributions. There are a few days a week that that's got to be priority A.
Right. Now, so would that fall into, so you said you got 3 blocks throughout your day, right? And that's where you do your heavy lifting, right?
Yeah. That would always fall in a block.
So the money-making stuff, you always make sure it falls in a block.
It has to. I mean, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, if you're a CEO of business and you can make a phone call that could bring in $100,000 account, a $5,000 account, and you've put it off,
Yeah.
why are you putting it off? I'll give you another secret. I'm a time management freak. Read everything you can on it, and I like it because successful people they manage their priorities well.
Sure.
Leave it at that. Okay. Time that,
I
whatever
agree
the
with
case.
priorities over time for 100%.
Yeah.
Like
That's why I wanted to kind of reword
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, I
But
totally agree.
the one thing I do, and again, I teach my kids this, I do one thing every day I don't want to do. It's called, I don't want to do it muscle. And it's like, I could have other people pick up my dry cleaning, but I'll go pick it up. Or it'll be one thing. It's a phone call to like a client that is just so pissed us off. But I know that like none of my partners can handle that level of a phone call. And I want to put it off for like 5 days, but I'm like, no, I don't have nothing that pisses me off Tuesday. I'm making that phone call first thing. It's called I just don't want to do it. I try to, in a 5-day week, have like 3 days to just kind of, so that when my partner goes, oh man, we got this, we got that, I'm like, just give me the phone call. Just give me the phone number. I'm not afraid of that because I built I don't want to do it muscle anyway. So that was one thing I added about 5 years ago because I used to hate, man, I'd walk into my secretary, I have that phone number on my desk of that client that you don't want to call. You put it off for 3 days and then
Those are things
you're
that start
aggravated.
manifesting and gnawing at you too.
They nose at you for 3 days. So I just like, screw it, give it to me. Let me make that phone call. Boom. I don't want to do it, but I'm getting it out of the way.
Yeah. Interesting. What do you do when you go about augmenting whatever planning strategy you have? Right. So here you've got something and you've developed, you've made the blueprint for your week or for your quarter or whatever. Right. And you feel like when do you know, and this kind of maybe goes back to our conversation about pivoting around a lot, right? Because we see this a lot. When do you know it's time to tweak something? It's time to hey, my goal is to go to the gym at 6 a.m. and be working by 7. It ain't working, right? Do you get off of that and say, hey, I'm going to do the gym at night because I'm a night person, I'm not a morning person, or what? When do you know? And that's just one example. When do you know it's time to augment the system that you're deploying, or the strategy you're deploying, the planning session that you're deploying, or the planning protocol rather that you're deploying? When do you know it's time to augment?
Very easy. Either A, you're not doing it, so it's not realistic.
Okay.
So if you set a goal to like exercise every day and you're not doing it, clearly that's not working.
Sure. So
you either got to shorten the time, change the time, find something else that you enjoy doing, get in the group exercise, whatever it is, you set a goal, it's not working. Okay. You're not doing it. Or number 2, it's not working. We are afraid to look at measurables.
Yeah.
In other words, what do you measure? In other words, if your goal is to save money and you look at it 3 months down the road and you haven't saved anything, well, clearly your goal of maybe putting money away every month doesn't work. And you need to start every week, or you need to put $1 away every day. You got to constantly look at the results and go, it's not working. If it's not working, you got to change it. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Sure. So if something's not working, change.
And so when you look at it, how do you know that things to change? Like not how do you know what to do, but what is your typical course of action? If this ain't working, I need to switch something up. Give us an example of what that's looked like for you.
Okay. You set up a marketing plan for your company. Okay. You have an advertising plan. Well, I get a dashboard system every day on everybody who comes into one of my companies, and I know what source they come in. Okay. Well, let's say that I bought a digital marketing campaign, and I look at the numbers on Friday and it didn't produce anything. And I look at it the next week and it didn't produce. And then the digital marketing person calls me and goes, hey, how's that program doing? And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I go, we're just hanging on. He goes, good. Why don't I get back to you in 4 weeks and we see how it's doing? Well, it hadn't worked for the first 2 weeks. Well, that phone call ain't going to go that well with me, because I'm going to go, listen, James, actually the first 2 weeks have been awful. And if I don't see a massive improvement in the next 2 weeks, we're going to pause it. We're going to need to convene again, come up with a better strategy, because this isn't working. So I look at, I measure everything. Because I believe if you don't measure it, you can't manage it, and you can't improve it.
Because then it's completely subjective. And I think sometimes the stories we tell ourselves are just complete fabrications, right? Without the data, it's completely subjective.
Data takes out emotion.
Yes.
That's why I like data. Yes. Data makes a decision very easy for me.
Yeah.
Because it's not what I feel like. It's what the numbers are in front of me.
100%. 100%. And oftentimes too, and I'm sure you found this I know you found this as well. I don't think I know this. but sometimes the things you think, the data actually speaks to the contrary, right? And so our emotions are lying to us, right? Our feelings are lying to us about whatever
I
it
have that
is.
right now. I have a meeting with one of my advertising reps, and I asked my assistant how many leads we had from that source, and she said 1 in the last 2 months.
Mm,
I can't believe it. That's an awful response.
yeah,
I know it wasn't quite what I thought, but I'm staring at the results in my phone right now. So, but that's an easy decision to make tomorrow.
right.
It's going to be like, hey, listen, there's no results. The
Yeah,
results don't warrant it. See, that makes that decision so easy for me
sure.
because I have the data.
Yeah, 100%. Cool, man. So I want to give you a chance to talk more about, was it The World's Greatest Business Plan? Is that
Yeah,
what it's
World's
called?
Greatest Business Plan. Real simple. You can't forget a book like that.
Can't.
World's Greatest Business Plan. It's just started because, like I said, my son was starting a business, and I wanted to create a business plan that he and his friend could do that I felt like dotted, knocked all the big boulders over, but wasn't exhausting.
Sure.
Remove the exercises that don't make any sense, like a financial forecast. That's a
Sure.
fantasy. They spend every business plan book's got this financial forecast, and it's based on filling in all the numbers that make your company work. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? You can only count on one thing in a business. The only money you have to count on is the money you're bringing to the table.
Right.
Whether it's going to make $1, you can't count on that. So
Right.
it's a business plan book that's a lot simpler, and it's somebody from 12 years old to 100. Any business, it hits all the major pain points. And so, yeah, I wrote that, and it's free. If you just go to my personal site, I make it really easy for you. SeanCastrina.com, you get it free. It'll say free download at the top. You get the ebook, but the reason why I like that version is because it has the business plan in it. You can type it out, and that way you can use that with your investors. And I did a couple bonus chapters in there, because I was writing it like for my son.
Right.
So I wrote like the fact of when you need to pivot your business plan. Okay, like you did a business plan, and then I do like a little chapter of Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the
Right.
mouth.
Yeah. It's a great
So
quote.
how do you pivot? Then the second thing I wrote about is how to pitch your business plan to investors.
Cool.
What are they going to ask, and how are you going to answer, and what are the key things they're going to want to know? I put a chapter in there about that.
Yeah.
And then I put a chapter in there about how to be a great entrepreneur. Like, I don't bet on ideas, I bet on people. Watch Shark Tank. They bet 80% of the time on the person.
Sure.
So I did like 10 qualities that I thought, hey, you want to be a successful entrepreneur, be successful in general. These are the 10 qualities you really want to work on. And so that I kind of threw that in the book to kind of make it, so that people had a better chance. Again, starting a business is daunting, 1 and 2. So I tried to give them a business plan that I thought they could definitely work through. They can absolutely do it in 30 days. I laid out over 30 days, and then a couple bonus chapters to give them a little boost over the top. And you get that for free at SeanCastrina.com.
Cool, man. I dig it. I enjoyed the conversation, my friend. We'll definitely include that link below, guys. You can check that out, and make sure to, I don't know, Sean, if you're present on social media, but if people want to follow you there.
I'm verified on Instagram, Facebook. It tells you I don't know any of these things. My team always tells me that's a big deal.
Okay.
They go, you're legit. So, I'm on Instagram, and so you can always DM me on that.
Cool. Awesome, man. I appreciate your time. Take care, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.